The program is still this morning on ITV, and we are on to the Aviation Today segment with Mr. Godi Ike. Welcome to our studio this morning.
Hi, good morning, Gabriel. How was your weekend?
It was fine.
Wonderful.
I hope you had a nice weekend too.
Always.
Okay.
Always.
Today on the program, Aviation Today, we will be taking you 2 weeks back where we stopped the last time, and we'll refresh your memory from where we stopped, and then we get started from there, just to ensure that you are following us. Last week we did another segment with His Royal Highness George Obo. He was here in our studio to shed more light on the Nigerian Air that is to take off by December this year. So many great issues, you know, there we talked about, and today we're returning to our segment. So if the PD is here, let's roll with the last slide before last week. That's a week before last. So we can hear from the
That's a clip one. Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's have clip one, please. That was exactly what we had last week as clip 4, just to refresh the memory of our viewers. And,
okay, that's clip 1 there.
We'll take it from there.
Global size of maintenance.
That's why, you know, a global size of maintenance, repair, overhaul, you know, MRO, you know, market continues. Just to refresh, they've seen this already. They saw it 2 weeks ago. We want to refresh memory and then take it through. Remember, what we're dealing with today is aircraft maintenance. Right. Further research shows that small airlines with a fleet below 50 to 60 aircraft will find in-sourced maintenance inefficient. As a matter of fact, I had this discussion very exhaustively with the management of ICRC, that is the Infrastructure Concession and Regulatory Commission. Yes, we had a 2-hour session discussing the issues of Nigeria Air. And this was mentioned to them. They had the privilege of knowing that if we have to set up our own MRO, then we must we must have enough fleet, and then reach out to the regional, you know, airlines and ensure that
they come into service.
They come into service. Otherwise, it will be counterproductive. Okay, so let's go on. They have to either outsource or sell its MRO services to other carriers for better resource utilization. All right. As examples, experts cite the fact that South African Comairs 26 Boeing 737s maintenance is outsourced
to South African
Airways Technical Department. And Spain's Air Nostrum, which operates 45 CRJs and ATR 72s, outsources its 300-person maintenance department to other airlines 20% of the time.
Okay.
So these are proofs that if you don't have enough airplanes to attend to,
you might be running at a loss.
Counterproductive. So as we plan to set up our own MRO in Nigeria, as we plan to set up an awesome national airline we can all be proud of in the name of Nigeria Air, we must be mindful of the parameters and ensure that we do things properly rather than just throwing money, you know, at the spirits.
Okay, but if we have, if we put the total number of fleets in Nigeria, that's those owned by the private sector, and we set up MRO and we get all of them to come service their planes, you know, in the one Nigeria has set, would that still be counterproductive?
No, for as long as we do a legislation, you see, this is all part of it. Each time we do things in this nation, we don't seem to think them through and make them holistic, so that the desired result will be gotten. Very often, we engage in fire brigade. get things, done very quickly.
And then shortly after, you begin to see loopholes.
That's correct.
You should have thought through.
Because the motivation usually is not to have good things happen to our great nation. The motivation, more often than not, appears to be money. And we need to drop that attitude, and we need to begin to think things through thoroughly, and package them as one workable unit, and then move on. So this is why some of us are insisting that in getting Nigeria back to, getting Nigeria up to work for us, we must think things through, and we must do them properly and ensure that this one will not fail.
Okay.
All right. So clip 2, please. Here we go. Aircraft maintenance checks and inspections. So part of it. Periodic inspections needed to be done on all commercial and civil aircraft after a certain amount of time or usage are known as aircraft maintenance checks.
Okay.
At the completion of any maintenance, a person authorized by the National Airworthiness Authority, example of the National Airworthiness Authority, NCAA in Nigeria, that is Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. That is our own, Airworthiness Authority. Okay, signs a release stating that maintenance has been done in accordance with the applicable airworthiness requirements. Okay. Okay. For certified aircraft, an aircraft maintenance engineer or aircraft maintenance technician is usually the one to certify the maintenance. Okay. But for amateur built or homemade aircraft, the owner or builder can certify it. Okay. Now, distinguishing between these two, when you talk about certified aircraft, you're talking about those well-established manufacturers who put their seal and stamp on the machine they produce. And example like Boeing, Airbus, Embraer, all those known and world-acclaimed manufacturers. Yes. If you have to touch their plane, you must be trained and certified engineer or technician before you are allowed to work on them. But if you have these other small light planes that some individuals dotted all over the world, manufacture, they make quite a lot of beautiful things out there that they use for fun, and some use them in the farm to head animals towards a particular direction that they want them by flying low and either behind them or from the side. So you can
and some are actually used for
spraying,
spraying of
chemicals and pesticides. That's correct. So those are known as the amateur built or home-built airplanes. For those, the owners take responsibility for, because they really do not put at risk, the public who will be flying from one point to the other. So that's the rule.
Have we had any issue, especially in Nigeria? We know how to cut corners. We can't pretend about that. Where somebody receives a kickback and say, look, this is good, even when it's not good. Have we had those issues in Nigeria?
I would guess they happen. Otherwise, some of the very silly crashes we've experienced in this country should not have been in the first place. Because somebody should have known that something was wrong. Like I keep saying, airplanes are very faithful machines. They tell you what's coming up wrong. They give you every sign, signal that you need to know that something is not right somewhere. But human operators can be very unfaithful, dishonest, and sometimes let me keep that last word I want to use to describe how we can be.
So we can move forward.
That's why planes fall off the sky. So otherwise, they are very faithful machines. They are well built. Right. Okay. Clip 2. Are we done? Yes. We're done with clip 2. Let's go to clip 3. Clip 3. Here we go. Aircraft maintenance checks and inspections continue. Unlike military aircraft, which follow specific maintenance programs, which sometimes are not similar to that of commercial and civil operators, airlines follow a continuous inspection program approved by airworthiness authorities such as Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, NCAA, in Nigeria, okay? The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, in the USA, the United States of America, Transport Canada in Canada, European Aviation Safety Agency, that is EASA, in Europe, etc. There are many of them around the world, okay? Each jurisdiction prepares a continuous airworthiness maintenance program known as CAMP, C-A-M-P, under its operations specifications, usually and fondly known as OPSPECs. All right? That's how it works. Okay. Airlines and airworthiness authorities usually refer to the detailed inspection as checks. Those detailed inspections, they call them checks. Okay? They are categorized as A check, B check, C check, and D check. Checks A and B are lighter checks, while checks C and D are considered heavier checks. These checks take place at maintenance, repair, and overhaul, MRO company sites. You see that? So that's why we are yearning to have our own MRO, but in doing that, the feasibility and viability appraisals must be carried out, and then we must ensure that when we set them up, they must break even and make profit.
So at every point in time you go for an MRO, do you have to do the A to D check? Or,
well, no, for you see that to go on now, because we are going to be moving to A check to see what is required. Those lighter ones can be done in a hangar at the airport. Yes, because they are quite light and it takes a couple of hours to deal with. But let's just go on. We're in clip 4. You see which is air check, and then we'll take it from there. Here we go. Can you see clip 4? Air check.
Yeah, A check.
A check is usually performed approximately every 400 to 600 flight hours. So whenever a brand new airplane takes to the skies, as soon as it clocks the first 400 hours of flight, it is due for an air check. And depending on convenience, the maximum you can take it is about 600 hours. You must do it. Otherwise, that plane is not safe to be in the skies anymore. Okay? So, or 200 to 300 cycles. And cycles, each time an airplane takes off from one location and lands on another, is done one cycle.
It completes a cycle.
That's correct. So you now find out that it's quite a tricky thing. An airplane takes off from Abuja to Heathrow, London. It does one cycle, but it puts in 5.5 hours or thereabout. Okay? But another airplane takes off from Abuja to Ikeja. It does one cycle.
One cycle too.
But what does it put in?
Just
less than an hour. So it's quite tricky. And so those that carry out this maintenance have a way to balance this whole standards and then know when actually an airplane is due. You don't wait for an airplane to be technically faulty before you start fixing it. So these things are monitored professionally, and that is for Nigeria. That's the work of NCAA FAA officials. They must check the log of airlines all the time. As a matter of fact, it's a daily thing. Their logs must be checked daily.
Yeah, but where an airline fails to carry out the check, or remember that, look, I have done about 200 to 300 cycles, about 400 to 600 hours. What should be done? If it forgets, what should be done?
No, there's no chance for forgetting.
Okay.
You see, anytime a pilot is about to take off, he has his log. He logs in.
Okay.
As he lands at the other airport, he logs in. Okay. So it's the duty of inspectors to walk into that cockpit and ask for the logbook and go through, take their own information and go back to their offices. Okay. It will amount to extreme recklessness and unacceptable irresponsibility to say that somebody somewhere forgot. There's no chance for it. The system is set in such a way that you can call it perfect. Okay. However, we say that human beings are not perfect, but those that are trained to do this job are trained to be perfect, and they should be perfect because we are dealing with human lives here. If you're not good enough, get out of the system. Just get out. That's the only chance in the end there. So let's go on with our clip 4. These figures depend on aircraft type. Now I'm talking about, okay, air check is usually performed approximately every 400 to 600 flight hours or 200 to 300 cycles. Each takeoff and landing makes one aircraft cycle. These figures depend on aircraft type, so there could be some variation depending on the type of aircraft in question and how big or how small, okay? Usually carried out on the ground in a hangar. An air check requires a minimum of 10 man-hours and can need upwards of 50 to 70 man-hours to perform. Wow. Right, yes. The actual frequency of this check depends on aircraft type, the cycle count, and the number of hours flown since the last check. Okay, so and you can see some technicians, doing on the ground check on an airplane. That's a wing of an airplane that they are checking some things there. So those are the people we are calling the engineers and technicians. So that's the picture you're looking at, embedded in that clip. So let's move to clip 5. Clip 5, please. Here we go. Performed approximately, that is B check. Yes. B check now. Performed approximately every 6 to 8 months. Can you see now a variance? In the air check, we were dealing with flight hours and cycles. Now we're dealing with months of use. Okay. This is approximately every 6 to 8 months. B check needs about 160 to 180 man-hours to perform. Okay. Depending on the aircraft type, it is usually carried out at an airport hangar. Similar occurrence schedule applies to the B check as to the air check. Okay? Yeah. B checks are, however, most times incorporated into successive air checks. You're going to see what that means. For instance, checks A1 through A10. So what it means is that A check has A1, A2, A3, A4, A5 up until A10. Okay, but what we're being told now is that by the time you have done those A checks up to A10, you would have completed your B check. Okay. Can you get the picture? In the process of carrying out the A checks,
categories of A check from 1 to 10, you must have carried out the B check too.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. So it's subsumed into the categories of the A checks. You see how it works? Yeah. Quite complex, but simple as you just heard it. So checks A1 through A10 complete all the B check items. So when an airplane has gone through, all the A checks up to A10, the plane is as good as having done its B check and can fly as long as it needs to fly to be due for a C check. So let's look at C check in clip 6, which is our final clip for today. Clip 6 is there right now. That's our C check. C check is performed approximately every 20 to 24 months, or a specific number of actual flight hours, FH, or as recommended by the manufacturer. Okay? It is much more elaborate than the B check, requiring a large majority of the aircraft's components to be inspected. It usually puts the aircraft out of service because the aircraft has to sit there at the maintenance site until it is done. And the aircraft must not leave the maintenance site until it is completed. Okay? Due to the fact that it requires more space to perform, it is usually carried out in a hangar at a maintenance base. Minimum of 2 weeks and up to 6,000 man-hours are required to perform an average C check, depending on the aircraft type. You have a war jet sitting there and getting some maintenance. That's the photograph you're looking at. That's a war jet that's getting some maintenance out there. But remember again, military airplanes have their own routine of how they are checked as against the commercial and civil airlines. Okay. Right. So next week we are going to be concluding this awesome topic, aircraft maintenance, by looking at the intermediary check known as 3C.
Okay.
Yes.
What does that stand for?
Well, that's what we're going to be looking at next week. And then the awesome highest check, which is the D check.
The D check.
Where, I just, because I know that time is usually not our friend on this program, I reserve those two for exhaustive discussion. So we're going to deal with those next Monday, before we move into something brand new, another series. So our viewers, please stand by next week, and you can't miss the 3C, which is an intermediary check between C and D, and then the awesome D check. I remember once during the 11th aviation conference that took place in Sheraton. I was in attendance many years ago. I think I'm trying to remember the date, in the 90s, in the early 90s, and I was in attendance in that conference. I remember asking the then Honorable Minister of Aviation, who happened to be live on that program, during the grounding of EAS. You remember the EAS airline that was grounded because, and eventually completely put out of service because one of their airplanes crashed in Canada. Right. And it happened to be one of those, Russian brands, that they were flying at the time, and the minister and the government in place at the time, in their wisdom, thought that those planes should be phased out of service in Nigeria. But then it occurred to me, from what I knew, and I still know today, that that decision was not right. And so I had to ask the minister a question. Gabriel, I got a standing ovation from all the white people from all over the world that attended our conference. I had a standing ovation for that question. You know what that question was? I asked the Honorable Minister, you just grounded these airplanes. As a matter of fact, the brand of the aircraft is known as BAC 111. So it's usually fondly known as BAC 111. It's a Russian brand of commercial airplanes, BAC 111. Awesome, quite ugly, with very huge sound from its engines, and you can really disembark through the tail.
Okay.
The tail, it has this, you know, tail access. So you
like like military aircraft.
That's correct. That's correct. I used to really enjoy, you know, flying them, especially, you know, disembarking through the tail. I found it quite funny, but I enjoyed it. And then, so I asked this honorable minister, said, would you consider an airplane that sincerely and thoroughly undergone a D check as an old airplane? That was my question to the minister. From every indication, the minister didn't quite understand that question. It wasn't her fault. She wasn't an expert in aviation field, but she occupied the position in question. I didn't get an answer to that question. But then I received a standing ovation from especially the international people who were in that you know, conference at the time. And I remember the owner of EAS Airline, the former governor of Kogi State, during coffee break, you know, that was when I first met him in my whole life, coming to tap me by the shoulder and say thank you for that question. However, it didn't stop the airplane, the Black 111 being phased out from Nigeria. But that's fine. If it's all for our safety, it's okay. But then a D check, when we do it next week, you see what it means and what it turns an airplane into.
Okay, and what impact has the airport facilities on, what impact has it on aircraft maintenance? That is, if the facilities are not state-of-the-art facilities, like we have some airports in Nigeria, yet planes have to, you know, land on them. What impacts do they have on, you know?
First of all, yes, when you're talking about the infrastructure, if the runway is not smooth and nice, there's likelihood of an airplane touching down and bumping out of course, and of course crashing right there on the ground and slaughtering innocent passengers. That's a possibility. If the instrument landing system is not the best that you can have, there's likelihood that pilots will be misled and they find themselves descending wrongly and heading to the wrong direction rather than to the threshold of the wrong way. And what then happens is that you have an unnecessary crash on your hands. So there's no gainsaying the fact that we need the best of infrastructure at all our airports. We need the best. Technology has done it all. All we need to do is to be responsible and then spend responsibly, get the best that we can afford. And then, and all of these things that we're talking about, Nigeria is such a huge, awesome, worthy nation. I was once on my way to Taipei, Taiwan. That was precisely in 1988, and I stopped over somewhere in the Netherlands, you know, to have a change of flight. And just as soon as I gave my passport to the young man who was supposed to get me my boarding pass for the next phase of the flight, he said, "Oh, Nigeria, very rich, wealthy." And you know what he said to me? The kind of money your people spend, if we spend it here, we will go down. And that was the days when we had to use a document known as MCO. I've forgotten the full meaning of that acronym, MCO, you know, denominated in dollars. And the man described for me how our wealthy and awesome men will come with portfolio of MCOs packed full with millions of US dollars worth, booking flights for round the trip all over the world for themselves, families, and sometimes men and their girlfriends. And then the young man joked and joked and joked. He wouldn't let me go and said, "You are worthy." very worthy. If what happens in your country happens here, we'll sing. We'll sing. So Nigeria is worthy.
Well, okay.
And so
we can achieve anything.
We can afford the best.
Anything.
We can afford the best. And that's what I am asking those that are concerned right now. Be patriotic, give us the best.
Okay, be patriotic and give Nigeria the best. That is from the aviation freak, Godi K. And he'll be here next week again, Monday, to tell you about the 3 C's and the D check. He'll be doing that in detail. That is why we have to step it down today for want of time. And we'll be here again next week, Monday. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's always my pleasure.
All right. We'll now take a quick break. When we return, the program this morning on ITV continues. Stay with us.
Data analysis on issues on governance, politics, economy, among many other current and burning issues in both local and foreign scenes.
The parliamentary intra-party opposition to the APC.
Well, you know, the intrigues and interest in parliament is not just about